Well, hello class, and welcome to week 5. I'm sitting here, actually in my living room, and probably, one of the things I like to do in these some of these videos. Obviously, I do a lot of them from my office, but I realize that a lot of what's happening as you do online education is this is your setting, right? You're doing your learning with the couch in the background, the lights from the ceiling. Maybe there's even a game, or there's a show on. Maybe it's on mute over to your periphery. And so I get it. This is life. So I thought I would share my video this week, which will be a bit of a briefer video from my living room. So let me do a couple things. I want to before you watch the rest of this video, I want to encourage you, hit pause on this and go watch the video that I just posted on what my philosophy of education is, okay? And I want to say something, and I don't in any way want this to sound like I'm like, oh, look at me, because it's not it at all. I've received a number of emails, and I'm actually going to say this aside from my initial video says, from students in this class who have said that they're grateful for my involvement in the course so far. And I can't tell you how much that means to me to hear, because I try to really intentionally be in the mix of what's happening and not be an absent, well, some are absent-minded professors. I was going to say absent professor, because of my sincere concern and interest in your learning and what we're taking this content and then putting it into your practical application and what this means for you as you learn this content. Okay, so thank you for your words of encouragement. I value that tremendously. And again, I will say I believe that the new LMS Canvas is definitely helping that, for me to seem even more present and the content to seem even more meaningful, because there's not as clunky of a system that we had in Sakai that's kind of creating some challenges. So thank you for that. So again, if you haven't hit pause yet, go back and watch that video, and then come back and watch the rest of this, okay? So this is a really important week, and I know I say that all the time. Last week was a really important week. In fact, last week was, as we looked at the career issues for a diverse workforce, career counseling for the global economy, and again, some of the things that we looked at kind of as we look at this kind of rear view mirror. So where were we? So last week, some of the content may not have seemed as applicable, and I know that many of it, especially in the diverse workforce, but the content in the global economy, especially as we looked at things having to do with perhaps the global recession or the Great Recession things, some of the questions that were asked in that, that can, sometimes like, wait a second, this was, the book was written in 2012, and obviously a lot has happened, a lot has changed in the last 6 years, and if you kind of know about it doesn't really take a whole lot to know about this, but the book publishing industry, the reality is that although the book was published in 2012, the writing of the book that we've been looking at started well before then, right? So it wasn't something that they just did, 1 month they published a book and it was done. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. So the Great Recession is something that, although some of you, maybe in your mid-20s, you were maybe a mid-teens, you still saw people that were affected by it. And you still, I love the question that we even looked at last week, as you share about your background, what were some of the biases or the viewpoints that you brought to the discussion that informed the way that you thought about work, things that you could or couldn't do, based upon an upbringing, or you made a connection, you thought about if you want to own a nice home or a fancy car or certain jobs. Like I think about, I've got 4 young kids, and so what are they looking at as far as in industry? Is there, I have 2 daughters, is the thought that they could eventually someday be CEOs. So we're looking at all of these these aspects are what are the things that we bring to the table. So great content there. So thanks for your contributions there as well. Appreciate that. I hope that it was a bit of a kind of a breather of a week, although some heavier content, but I hope that you were able to kind of take a deep breath and relax a little bit. This week is an interesting week as well as we look at a number of different areas. So here we are, week 5, and we're looking at the career counseling process, the techniques. I love these chapters, information gathering processes, and then developing rapport with the client. So as you think about the process, and if you look at kind of how we've moved through the book so far, Anderson and Vandehe, there's some very clear sections that kind of set us up for the next section. So here we now we went to the theory aspect, now we're in the technique aspect. So there's a differentiation between those two. Here's what I want you to think about. In the question that's asked this week in our discussion, I want you to think about what is a technique that you most identify with, okay? And that's an important question because as we continue on into the remainder of our course, okay, so what one technique do you find yourself most closely identifying with? I want you to be thinking about that in relation to, from here on out, as your final assignment is you will write basically what you would do via a dialogue between you and a fictitious client, a woman by the name of Leslie, whose information I provide for you, kind of for details and history and all of the background and all that. What techniques would you use? How would you approach the work? And so, whether it's, whatever the technique may be that you go, that's the one. That will be an aspect, then, I would hope, that you will write about in your final, your intake plan that you're writing up for this final assignment. Okay, so be thinking about that as you think about what would I do in helping a client? What techniques would I want to use that I think would most benefit the work that I'd get to do with the client? Okay, so don't just look at this as kind of an isolated question, but be thinking kind of more long-term in the next 4 weeks as we enter into some additional techniques, kind of practical application questions and thoughts. How would you actually use this technique, or you could even look at these techniques in ways that would make a significant impact and difference in the lives of your clients, okay? And then the other section I want you to look at, and I love this portion of the class. I've done this now for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years, and it's been so great because I get such a wide swath of responses. So if you look into the 5th Unit 5 discussion, find 3 artifacts, okay? So newspapers, magazine articles, chapters from a book that don't directly connect to the career development, so on and so forth, video presentations and all that, and share them here, either by way of attachment or URL, okay? So I want you to think about what are some connections, both directly and, or I guess you could say indirectly, okay? So if you're looking for an example, some of the things that have already been written in here you may find is helpful, but I had a student that asked about something completely, I guess you could say, seemingly unrelated to career development, but they're making the connection, okay? So this is what I really hope for in a class like this. I hope that, now I know that many of you won't go into this field, but I hope that at least in the moment while we're in the class, one of the things that you will focus on is seeing things, right? So seeing them, thinking about things through the lens or the mindset of career development, seeing them through the lens of career development. And so as you read, even when you watch a movie, you go, oh my goodness, there's some principles that I've been looking at in my class. Or you're reading a book that's, maybe it's a work of fiction, and you go, oh wow, that's something we've actually talked about, those elements in class, and you put it together and you think that that's a great example, okay? So here's what I found and what's been so great. In fact, a video that we'll watch later on in the semester or the term was something that a student shared in this very assignment years ago. And I go, oh my goodness, that is an amazing video. It's a video that you watched from Dr. Meg J, I think. not looking at it directly. I think it's Meg J. It's really fantastic about the new adulthood or emerging adulthood. But I wouldn't have found that, and as a student did, brought it, and so I've used a number of these artifacts. So think about things that you go, man, this is a great example of fill in the blank, okay? So they don't necessarily have to have a direct connection, so they may not necessarily be from a directly related, career development related resource. You should, however, be able to easily explain how they connect, okay? And here's what I would challenge you. Think outside the box when you're considering what you would like to share with the class, okay? You'll provide a brief paragraph or so, description of why you found each artifact to be especially insightful and how you see it connecting to the field and study of career development. Additionally, discuss any connections to the career counseling process as discussed in Chapter 8 of Anderson and Van de Hee, okay? So this is a fun assignment, and truly, I mean that. Think outside the box. And just kind of, last week I gave you the time off to engage in discussion or to not engage in discussion. And I really, as I'm thinking about this now, last week, when I'm in a face-to-face class, let me say it this way. I can look out at the class and, maybe it's a Tuesday, Thursday class, and I can look at them on a Thursday morning and go, you're tired right now, aren't you? You are just in the thick of it and you are tired. I think we're going to end a little bit early today, give you a little bit of rest. And so last week, I just had this sense that there was it's a busy term, I need a little break. So I wanted to give you that time to not be as involved with your classmates in conversation. I think that I want to do this, and shouldn't say think, I want to do the same thing this week, okay? I want to give you some time and space to think through, be really thoughtful in your artifacts, be really thoughtful about the techniques that you most identify with, okay? I don't need you to engage in discussion this week, okay? I'm really just looking for you to respond to the questions. You have a lot of other things going on. You have LipTac chapters 4 and 5. You have your final week, I guess, really kind of the final 2 weeks of your vocation and calling text reading. You have case study number 7 and your 4th LipTac 3-2-1 response. So I'm going to give you another week this week where all I need you to do is respond to the questions. Okay, take to the end of the week. If you already got it done, perfect. If you'd like to engage and enter in a dialogue with your classmates, great. But you don't have to. We'll finish out the last 3 weeks of the term and you will engage in discussion. But for now, take advantage of another kind of a down week, knowing that you have lots of other things to do. Don't worry about discussion, but really be intentional and thoughtful and purposeful in your artifacts and identifying which technique it is that you kind of feel most closely connected to, so that as you're thinking about your final assignments, you can be really intentionally, once again, thinking about what would I do with that potential client. Okay? So hope that makes sense. Any questions, always feel free to call or email me. I've tried really to be very quick in responding this term. I've really kind of been really thoughtful and intentional in that. So keep up the great work. Your insights are fantastic. I'm loving the learning that's taking place. Again, I'm so appreciative of the kind and encouraging words. But really what that is, it's a reflection of, I hope you see it, my desire to see you succeed. And to learn just so much about what's going on in this class. And again, I'll say, I think this is one of the more important classes you'll take, and I do believe it connects to everything that we've looked at in your program so far, and will connect to everything else you look at. Because it's people, right? It's real life struggles and challenges and happenings in the lives of people. And so I'm so pleased with your work up to this point, and I anticipate that will continue to be the case for the remaining 4 weeks. So have a great week. Enjoy the reading. Enjoy your final official week on the books of your vocation and calling text reading. I'm really looking forward to reading your response papers next week, and I will definitely get those back to you sooner than later, so you know where you stand for your final assignments. All right? Have a great week or rest of it, and I will continue to see you online.